This is 20 Days of Learning with Illustrator. Let's get into gradients. Gradients in Illustrator can be a great way to add some artistic flair to your artwork. In Illustrator, there's 3 different types of gradients. You can see them here. I've got linear, radial, and freeform. Basically, linear is going to be your gradient that has one color and draws in one direction, and then you have another color. You can create additional colors in between, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Radial is where we have one color in the center and then another color that's going to be on the outside, and the color transition happens basically in that move from inside to out or from outside to in, however you want to look at it. Freeform gradient is when we select specific spots within our artwork to determine where we want the color transition to occur. Now, to apply gradients to your artwork, select whichever object you're working with. Make sure you're on your fill or stroke, depending on where you want your gradient applied. Come over to the gradient tool. If you don't see this here, you can also access the gradient window by going to Window and selecting Gradient. Once you're in the gradient window, you can select linear, radial, or freeform. Once the gradient is applied, you can adjust many of the options using the gradient windows. For example, I can adjust the angle that I want my linear gradient to apply. I can also adjust how much white or how much black I want on my gradient, and then the mix in between. Within your gradient, you can add additional points by hovering underneath this gradient slider. If I double click any of these points, I'll be able to select or change the color. Sometimes when you want to change your gradient color, if you double click the color, it's only going to give you black and white as an option. If you click this icon in the top right, you can switch this to RGB. Now we can select any color that we want on the spectrum, or we can insert our own HTML code to get a specific color. You can also edit the gradient by clicking Edit Gradient. This is going to give you an editing tool directly on your artwork. So you can use this little square here to expand where the gradient applies. You can use this little circle here to choose exactly where this end might occur. You can also select the gradient as a whole and move it around. So with a radial gradient like this, I might choose to put it up on the top right, make this a little smaller, drag this down so that it looks almost like a light shining on this object. You can also change the colors here by double clicking, just like I did before. You can choose how far that color expands. I can also select this little dot here to adjust the actual shape. And then if I hover just to the right of this circle, I can rotate my gradient so it applies a little bit differently on my shape. The freeform gradient is pretty unique, so I want to show you the details here. In the freeform gradient, I can't edit anything using the gradient window. I have to go into this edit gradient mode. This is going to show me several spots that I can move and adjust. If I double click any spot, I can open up the color and change whichever colors I want to work with. I can also expand the influence of each point on my gradient, or just click anywhere within my shape and add additional points to my gradient. It's not uncommon for new users to not know exactly how to apply a gradient and end up with a lot of ugly artwork. So here's just one example of when a gradient might be applied. Instead of just using a single color for my leaf, I chose to apply a freeform gradient. If I click Edit Gradient, you can see where the various points are on my artwork. Also, here's a bunch of more modern graphic design gradients that you'll see. You'll notice purple and pinks and these teal colors. They're really popular with gradients right now, so you'll see this a lot, though this is probably going to change in a few years when trends change. There are also a lot of logos that have gradients. So like, for example, just these few, even the Jaguar logo here has different gradients. A lot of tech companies like gradients in their logos, so you'll see those a lot as well. Really, the best way to become proficient with gradients is to just practice. So a good idea might be to come and grab some of these logos or grab some of those images and try creating some of those gradients for yourself and see what you can do. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we will see you next time. Bye.